All right, so I would like to welcome everybody to today's Shop Talk. Very excited. It's a short month for November. We're only going to have 3 Shop Talks because we're on Thursdays, and we have a Thanksgiving coming. So I know everyone's looking forward to that. My name is Jamise. I'm your moderator as well as community manager. You can contact me if you have any questions about the community, if you want to participate. You can find us also on facebook.com/SharePoint ShopTalk. If you like us there, you can find all of the videos and highlights and tips and things like that on SharePoint. As well as you can find us on LinkedIn. We have an active group there. Our group name is SharePoint ShopTalk. And also on Twitter at SB ShopTalk. And then also our organizer, Arcovis, at Arcovis, New York City. So I do want to share with you a little bit about GoToWebinar for those of you who might be using it for the first time. We are using webinars, so it's not the meeting, so there is no chat functionality. But you can look and see who are the attendees there. You can also ask questions, and there's a raise your hand feature if you would like to speak your questions to us. Oops, sorry about that. All right, so during Shop Talk, we just ask that you please do not put the call on hold if you're on the phone. Especially if it plays music, you can always call right back. If you need your audio pin to speak when you're on the phone, and you can press *6 and to mute as well as unmute yourself. If you're asking questions over the phone, just please state your name and your question, and remember that no question is too big or too small. So we want to hear them all. All right. So without further ado, we're going to begin introducing our panelists. They're all not here, but I know that Chris is here with us right now. So Chris, please introduce yourself to us.
Yes, thanks, Jamise. My name is Chris Moti. I'm a consultant and analyst for Portal Solutions. I'm doing a lot of IA and UI work, particularly right now.
Nice. I'm going to pick your brain a lot today then. Also on the call is, well, Laura was on, but she had to step off real quickly, so we'll hope she'll come back. But we have John White with us as well. Please, John, introduce yourself to us.
Hi, yeah, my name is John White. I'm SharePoint MVP up here in the Great White North, just outside of Toronto. I'm the CTO with a company called Unlimited Viz, and we specialize in SharePoint solutions with business intelligence.
Great to have you back.
Thanks.
And I just saw Nilesh come on, and I'm just making him organizer. I love for him to introduce himself to the group. I don't know if he's next or on my slides. Nope, we have Natalia. She should be coming on soon. Nilesh is here. Please introduce yourself to the group.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. This is Nilesh Mehta. I'm glad to join in. I'm a senior SharePoint architect with Engineer Solutions. I've been working with SharePoint for about 9 years now. Then I primarily focus on the infrastructure side. I run the New York SharePoint user group, and just look forward to doing a lot more SharePoint. Thanks, James.
Thanks, Nilesh. All right, so those are our panelists, and we want to thank all of you who are joining us. We're looking forward to a very exciting SharePoint Shop Talk, where we're looking into SharePoint Public Facing Sites today. So let me keep going. We don't have Carlos. I just also want to remind you about John's October panelist spotlight tips and tricks. It was about externalizing your SharePoint data using SQL integration services. This was really cool. It was a great presentation, and we're growing people following it and finding it on YouTube and checking it out after the fact. And because we're not having a panelist spotlight this month because of November, it's a great time for you to go back and check out all the videos on YouTube. And before we begin our session, we want to thank Arcovis, our organizer of SharePoint Shop Talk. They are SharePoint experts and search specialists, Microsoft Gold certified partners specializing in SharePoint and search. you have any questions around SharePoint Search, you can always email them at info@arcovis.com and tweet to us at Arcovis, New York City. So, without further ado, let's begin. Today we're going to be talking about SharePoint Public Facing Sites. So, one of the things that I've always come across, and before I begin, I really would like everybody to feel like you can join in, the attendees. You can simply unmute yourself by clicking the unmute button, or if you're on the phone, pressing *6. All right, so we have, there's always the question, should you go with SharePoint for public-facing sites? I would love to pick the panelists' brains and talk to us about how you compel people, or who should really be using SharePoint public-facing sites. Anybody can join in first.
I'll throw it, and it depends.
Yeah. I was just going to say, first of all, you have to have the money to do so. That's the big. But I think the best candidates for people to move, what we see a lot of, is people that get exposed to SharePoint in more of an intra-extranet fashion, and then say, hey, we want to reuse this infrastructure we have in some way, or usually augment the infrastructure for a public-facing site, but use the same kind of technology approach, and we want to expand it in the public arena for our website as well. So that's not all, but sometimes it goes backwards. But a lot of times, what we're seeing is people who are already familiar with a familiar version on some level, on a collaborative level, and then want to extend it. Especially in 2010, the improvements that have come along in publishing.
Can you talk about some of the improvements for 2010?
Yeah, I think the best thing about the publishing improvement is the content editing experience. Love it or hate it, the ribbon definitely consolidates the approach of editing content, whereas in 2007, yeah, just how page layouts were created and the editing experience of different areas in SharePoint, it was just more painful. So at least in 2010, they have a much more unified approach to doing it. And page layout construction is also more robust in things you can do, and collapsing zones, and the markup is better too, which makes people who do UI work like me feel a lot better about working on it for public-facing sites. So there are definitely areas I think we'll see grow in the next iteration of SharePoint, particularly regarding mobility. Which out of the box is really bad. But as far as a platform for doing it in 2010, it's much more robust. And we can spin out public sites in 2010 a lot quicker than we could in 2007, just on the UI side alone. So I think that's a big advantage over it.
Yeah, I want to throw out, I think another candidate are going to be people that have a fairly well-established authoring process and a collaborative authoring process that involves multiple people. I've seen it in both scenarios. If you throw SharePoint as a public-facing website at an organization that has like one person who's assigned to the task, and now you tell them to do it with SharePoint, they're going to get angry because there are more steps involved. But if you do have I guess boils down to if you've got a business process that could benefit from an awful lot of the features, and there are an awful lot of features in there. That's a good candidate.
And this is Nilesh. If I may jump in with the last one, I think you probably have to belong to somebody with something like the Star Fleet and say, I have the passion to go and see something that has not been seen or found yet, because SharePoint development is going to be, if you are new to SharePoint, it's going to be so different from your traditional development processes that there's going to be a bumpy ride for you. I think there's going to be a lot of surprises from a development perspective over there. So you got to be one of those like Star Trek guys and say, I like the unknown.
Well, thank you so much, Nilesh. I couldn't really hear the last part of what you said, but that was probably just me. Can you repeat it if you can?
Yeah, just trying to see that you have to belong to Captain Jim Cook's like Starfleet and say, I like the unknown.
Oh, okay. Wow.
And then you have the the willpower to say, I will get this working on SharePoint, because there's going to be a nice ride if this is the first time you're doing something on SharePoint and a public facing site. Then
Got it. Yeah, that's what I've seen. Like I highlighted the last one in red because it was kind of stressed that it would be something that if you were already playing around with SharePoint and you want to get some more information or play around with it a little bit more, but not something that you would just kind of jump into and say, hey, I want to develop a site and let me just go with SharePoint.
Yeah, it's not. I don't necessarily know if it's so much about SharePoint, but it's about any kind of a collaborative web content management system, really, because what you're introducing processes and you're introducing complexities that aren't there for a single user type of environment. So part of this stuff is SharePoint as a product itself, and part of it is just the concept of having collaborative offering.
All right. Are there any questions around that before we move on? It's a big question, but I know that it's one that a lot of people are facing. And also what I noticed, I have a couple of friends who talked to me about Drupal. And at first I was a little bit confused because I said, well, how can they, someone just came in. How can they match up with SharePoint? But it's more of an intranet perspective when you're going SharePoint, but when you're considering Drupal, it's more of a public-facing site that is kind of flooding the market. Okay, so
I wouldn't say Drupal is running the market, but oh, I'm sorry. Was there a comment? Is there a question or about Drupal?
Well, yeah,
I don't know.
Comment, yeah.
Okay, it was just a comment then. Okay, sorry.
No. What were you going to say about it, though?
I thought you said that, I don't know, I was curious about, bringing up Drupal because they're kind of like, I can't imagine a more apples and oranges comparison. So, I don't know if there was a particular reason why you were hearing that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I believe it's apples and oranges, and that was the thing that that was so confusing to me because every time I told them, oh, I speak with SharePoint developers, and this is what they do, they kind of crucified me and said, hey, Drupal is where it's going to be in the future, and it's an open office system, it's free, and they were just talking to me about it, so I was kind of confused about it, but now I'm getting a lot more clarifications on the difference between Drupal and SharePoint in terms of public-facing sites. I mean, if you can clarify more for me, I would love it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I used to do WordPress consulting quite extensively, and I still am in love with the content management system, but when I came into the SharePoint world, it's like people who want to compare Google Apps to Office 365, or, I mean, they're just...
Bingo.
There couldn't be a further approach from taking a good comparison. So, if I go into a client and they say, we really need X, Y, and Z, I could maybe say, well, I don't know if SharePoint's the best solution for you, but by and large, people are already sold that they want the product. So if someone wants Drupal, they're going to go out and find Drupal people versus SharePoint. So, yeah, I mean, we do more Drupal to SharePoint migrations than we hear the other way around. So.
Oh, okay. That's good to know.
And I'd throw out, any of that, the open stuff, open and free stuff, tends to wind up being more of an enthusiast's platform than necessarily a solid business platform. Not to denigrate its capabilities.
I agree, and I think one of the other things, one of the other things is if companies, are traditionally not used to Microsoft products, then they are more, they might probably be driven towards the Drupal solution, because I've seen this many times too. People just say, why cannot just easily build this on Drupal? It's a web content management system, and their only focus is using this for like an intranet or an internet-facing site. They're not looking at the rest of the aspects of SharePoint with DMS or collaboration or workflows or business processes. And if they're just focusing on that one piece, then yes, it does make sense to talk about and see if SharePoint compares to Drupal or not, because SharePoint does come up with heavy maintenance, right? I mean, the environment for SharePoint is much more expensive. The kind of support skills that you need for SharePoint are probably more expensive than Drupal parties. But I agree with your sentiment. It's like apples and oranges, unless you're focused on a specific piece over there.
Right. I agree with you, Nilesh, and that's I've learned that kind of in hindsight. So now I can go back and talk to my enthusiasts, because that's exactly who they are for Drupal, and give them a more educated answer about SharePoint and the differences. We do have a couple of questions. The first being, how to make a SharePoint team site public? Are you using anonymous users?
You wouldn't normally make a team site. I don't know why the question's being asked, but you'd normally use a publishing site, which is a bit of a different architecture altogether, and it's designed for anonymous users at the end of the day. So there's a bunch of settings. How you do it is there are settings in the central admin for the application, and then there are also settings in the site collection to allow anonymous users. But a lot of the team site stuff doesn't work real well with anonymous users, or if at all.
I hope that answers your question. That was Tune 6. And he also has another question that says the public site page. Yes?
Can I interject for 1 second here?
Sure.
Just based on my couple of recent experiences here, when we've been trying to use SharePoint 2010 for an anonymous facing site, I can post a couple of articles, but there have been issues with opening Office documents directly in the browser and stuff like that. This is a known issue with anonymous facing site, and when you build a site that's anonymous, you use a document, a list view web part on the home page or on any of the pages of your SharePoint site, and you try to open up Office documents directly from there, it doesn't just open up in the browser directly. But if you go and do it directly, actually from the library, like the document library, and you open the same document in the browser, it works fine. And this is a known issue with the IIS options. So something that people should be careful about and know about before they make their sites anonymous access.
Thanks a lot. I hope that we have a lot of questions coming in, so I hope that's answering your question. And Tune 6, if you don't mind, you can always unmute yourself if you want more clarification when you're receiving these answers. You ask another question. How do you build a public site in SharePoint not using the web page editor?
Can you repeat that, please?
Oh, sure. Let me send this out to you guys.
Is Tune on the phone?
I believe he's on. Yes, I'm going to unmute Tune. Tune, can you say hello?
Hello. This is Tune.
Hi, Tune. Welcome.
I know you can build a public website using the web page editor or publish the public website builder in SharePoint, but that's way, way too limited.
In what way?
Excuse me?
Yeah, in what way?
The features that you can do, that you can implement, are too limited. For instance, you cannot put CSS files in the footer anymore, which you could do in Office Live Small Business. You don't have much control. They're all web parts. The gadgets are very, very limited. That's what I experienced. Maybe I don't have enough experience with it, but I was looking and looking for gadgets or web parts, and they're none available. So how do you build a complex public website in SharePoint?
I just guess that hasn't been my experience. There's not much you can't do with it. It's been what I've found. There might be, you might have to do some building yourself, but any of the web parts that aren't dealing with secure content should work just fine. I guess I just don't get where the problem lies.
I'm using SharePoint Online, and in
oh.
That's the difference, right?
Okay.
Okay, when you work with SharePoint on the server, SharePoint server, you have a lot more capabilities, I guess, right?
Yep.
All right, I'm going to, okay, well, so that was the confusion there. So SharePoint Online, and isn't that a current, I mean, a common question or mistake in terms of SharePoint Online and SharePoint Public Facing Sites or SharePoint Server?
The public-facing site structure in SharePoint Online has no equivalent in the on-premises version. It's a light kind of little example that's very limited in terms of what it can do purposefully.
Oh.
And yeah, you should not compare the two. It uses some of the publishing features from the on-prem version, but it's not the same thing at all.
All right.
It's basically designed so people won't use it. That's kind of my opinion.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Toon, for your questions. I have Tim that has a question here. He says, do you isolate forms or web apps for public sites versus internal and intranet? I'm going to unmute Tim. Hey there, Tim.
Well, sorry about that. I was on the call. Yeah, is there any architectural strategies that you guys have used in the past for exposing external sites?
There's a feature. I seem to be monopolizing, so anybody else jump in. But I actually my first super in-depth exposure to SharePoint 2007 was with a public-facing website for a charity, World Vision Canada, and they basically had a hosted SharePoint farm outside of their firewall, and then they had their authoring environment on the inside of the firewall. And we got to be one of those people who beta tested, used the content deployment capability that was there in 2007. And that's basically what it's there for. And it allows people on the inside to author content, and then on a scheduled basis, it'll take the content from inside and push it outside. Under the covers, it's doing basically an export and an import, but there's some security things around that. So you can lock down your farm on the outside of your firewall completely. But on the inside of your firewall, it can be open to whomever. So even the authors on the inside can't directly edit stuff on the outside. There are a number of strategies to doing it, but that's kind of like the safest one, if you will. But you can just spin up another application or even just a site collection and allow people in through the firewall, but you're obviously not getting the same level of security. So it's all going to boil down to what your security requirements are and what your budget is.
Yeah, that's my experience as well.
Was that question only from a CMS perspective or from an infrastructure perspective also?
Tim, that was to you. I wouldn't mind hearing it. Are you asking if it's
yeah, I'm just thinking. I mean, obviously, whatever John said, absolutely right here. But that's the CMS. I mean, there's going to be a lot more planning going on in terms of where you're going to keep your front-end servers and where your SQL is going to be, and where you're,
Yep.
how are you going to do authentication. If it's an external-facing site, you'll be keeping your front ends in the DMZ, and then you might be locking tons of ports along there. Yeah, do you want to keep your SQL in the DMZ, or do you want to bring it behind the firewall? Tons of security questions in that area and planning to do before you even make that an externally-facing thing, right? And an externally-facing farm will probably, depending on the size of your company, if it's a Fortune 500 thing, you are going to end up having 5, 6, 10 front-end servers, roughly, whatever, right? And just managing them will be a big challenge. The biggest thing with an externally facing site is the fact that if you never wanted to go down, you can't afford to even have 15 minutes of downtime, then you'll probably want to end up having a DR farm ready in place always, because one of the biggest issues with SharePoint is when you're trying to do upgrades or any kind of fixes, you have to go through an IS reset, and you can't do that in a production farm if you can afford a downtime. That means you have to flip over users to a DR environment, make sure that they can still get to a public-facing site from there while you're doing your fixes, your upgrades, your SP1s over here, and then move over to the DR farm and back and forth again. So a lot of planning goes on the infrastructure side over there.
Yeah, one other thing I'd throw out too is you're going to want to plan for the level of interactivity you're going to need with your website, because if you've got that external farm that's all locked down and anonymous only, well, they're not going to be putting data back in it. And even if they are, even if you don't lock it down, they might be putting data in. But if you're publishing over top of it all the time, you're just overwriting it. So any of that interactivity is going to have to be configured yourself. You're going to have basically will typically be interfacing with external systems or custom web parts that basically have the security level to write back to a specific location through some sort of a proxy account. So you're going to have to think about all that stuff. So if you've got a high-level interactivity, the architecture I propose probably doesn't work real well for you. You can't use any of that interactive SharePoint capability in that model.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. And I think that Tim came on just for that answer. He just had to step off. So thank you guys so much for that. And we have another question I'm going to share with the group. This one is from Matthew. I'm going to share with the group first so you can all see it while I'm reading it. And he says, I want to manage content on pages, but I don't know what to use the wiki zones in pages. I don't want my users to be changing fonts, for example. Is there a way to limit the way pages work, or all columns to a page library for content that will work in more plain text way? I'll use CSS to style everything.
Yeah, Matthew, before I jump in really quickly, yeah, there are attributes on the publishing content field in your page layouts where you can turn off certain parts of the ribbon, so you can turn off the font part of it. But when you turn off fonts, you lose the ability to bold, italic, etc. So there are attributes on that field that you can change that.
And I'd throw in, always use the fields. Don't use the content editor web part. Please stay away from it.
You can't control content editor web part. So I got to go, guys. See ya.
Bye, Kurt.
Yeah, there's a couple of real downsides to using the content editor web part. For example, if you've got a page and you've got content in your page, one of the nice things you have, one of the nice features in using SharePoint Publishing is the versioning capability. I can roll back to previous versions. Well, web parts on a page don't maintain that version, that state as part of the page. So when you save off a different version, all it's doing is saving the fact that there's a web part there with these parameters. And one of those parameters is the current content. So you can't roll back to previous content in a web part editor. And there's a whole bunch of other things, but that's a big one.
And Matthew, you're unmuted if you would like to have a follow-up question. Okay. So we are going to move on. I believe Toon has another question that I'm about to share with the group, and he says, I'm always trying to enable customers to update himself for the public site. If using third-party web parts, is customer still able to update the site himself? And Toon, you're unmuted. You can answer that question or clarify it.
Yeah, if you buy a complex third-party web part, is the user then able to the public website himself or herself? I'm still learning a lot, and I was wondering to what extent the user can still then update their websites themselves.
The same. It should be no different. Again, if we're talking about on-premise, obviously online you can't use third-party web parts at all.
On-premise.
Yeah, on-premise it's the same thing with the proviso of it depends on what that web part does, right? If it's reaching back with the credentials of the current user to do something, that's not going to work. So if you got a web part that displays your name, that may not work, or it may just show anonymous. So there's a bunch of factors you need to take into account. But again, yeah, it should work. I mean, there's nothing fundamental about it. It just depends on what it does.
Thanks a lot. All right, so I really like these questions that keep coming in. We will stop right in the middle of our presentation if a question comes up, so please feel free to keep your questions coming. So we're just going to go back to the PowerPoint here, and we'll continue talking about SharePoint Public Facing Sites. And I read two different presentations, and one was about public-facing sites being intuitive, and one more so about being interactive. And I would love to hear what you guys think is more important, if one is more important over the other, and really what does that mean when you're trying to develop a public-facing site? I can begin. I have some, I would like to talk about some of the key drivers when you're developing a site, and one of them being enforcing brand and corporate messaging. And then another would be embracing simple and efficient site design. And then searchable and relevant, easy to find content. And delivering a rich user experience. And last but certainly not least, integration of ROI-driven analytics and measurements. So I guess that all goes into the planning stage, correct?
Definitely does. I think you covered a lot, and obviously everything that we've spoken about for the last 20 minutes in terms of authoring content, all of that comes in here, the infrastructure, everything gets into the planning phase for a public-facing site. Primarily, but the biggest thing, a public-facing site is always supposed to be much more, let me say, impressive looking or beautiful looking, or just, has to be much more better looking than an internal facing site. So that's where probably most companies spend a lot of their time. It's like, how is this going to look like? It's going to be a very simple site. It's going to be, this beautiful looking SharePoint site. I think that's one of the key focus areas, and then be able to do, proper authoring or co-authoring over there.
Right. Yeah, I had a quote there, and that's it was for Chris, but he had to jump off. But he always used a quote for wherever he is. It says, knowing how people will use something is essential. So that's probably like the beginning steps when you're developing your SharePoint public-facing site.
Agreed. Yes, and that's every client will have its own different requirements. It's either what people are looking for or what you want to push out to people, right? For example, pharmaceutical companies, if you're working with them, they might want to make sure that they always have a trend. If there's a new drug coming on the market, they want to push it out. They want to promote that content out. They want to get as much information out for that content, and in a format that they know their end users will be looking for. If you are working for a finance firm, similarly, I mean, you have to know your audience and what they would be looking for, and if there's a new product coming out, how do we kind of promote that product out to the site then?
Right. All right. So I think that this is great. Before we look at our first site, there was this one question that I wanted to ask, and true or false. The more challenging a website is for a user to use, the less likely they will use it.
Yep.
Very true.
I say true too. I mean, I've gone to certain sites and I've been just discouraged just by the amount of different ways that I can go and not knowing even where to begin.
I think if I'm not wrong, the statistics say if they can find something in the first 10 seconds, they'll probably be off your site. I don't know if there's statistics. If one glance at the home page is like, how do I traverse down this? If you can see a contact us, like, many times, I'm sure all of you have been there. If you're looking for a contact us on your, phone provider like Verizon or AT&T, whatever the thing is, it's probably one of the smallest font at the bottom of the page. Never promoting, how do I contact support? It's going to be 5 clicks before I can get a phone number so I can speak with somebody. They will always try to promote the fact that, can we help you online? Because they don't want that many calls, right? And right. That fact that, determines, how people will look for it. If I can find us contact us in the first 5 minutes or first few seconds, I'm definitely not happy guy.
Yeah, and my other favorite one is locate a find a location. I say, find a location. Can I find the button to find a location? How about that?
Stuff like that. So I think those kind of things definitely make an impact. And I think that's what people look for. If I can find something that I'm really looking for, or I can find a product button on the top that gives me a list of products, then I'm pretty much going to walk away from that very soon.
All right. Well, thank you very much for going deeper into that. And we're going to look at our first site from top SharePoint sites. And this was actually rated number 3 for 2010. So I just want to make sure I'm sharing my screen. Everybody's seeing my internet now, right?
Yes, we are.
Okay, great. And this is Istanbul Ataturk Airport. This site to me is very interesting. It was number 1. Some of the things that number 3. Some of the things that I found on this site was that the boxes on the first page, they look like they're out of the box. I don't know how true that is, but
nope.
No.
Definitely not.
Okay, so what do we think of this site here? to me, I think it's a lot. It's a lot going on.
That's what I would say.
Yeah, it's definitely a heavy site. I mean, the UI, definitely, I like the UI. It looks like very nicely done. But there's a lot of content on the page over here. This is a website for an airport, so the primary thing I would be looking for is right in front of me. The fact that I can find arrival, departure information is right there. How real time is it? You know, are they showing this real time or not, or is it something that you have to constantly keep searching for? It looks like they are keeping it up to the time frame, which might be awesome. So every time I refresh the page, is that section going to automatically update itself, or do I have to do a page refresh to find the latest flight data over here?
Yeah, yeah, it looks like it's there are updates, and it tells you there right on flight info here when the last update was, and that's Turkish time. So I believe that's actually a minute ago.
Yeah, but that was when you open the page. Now, does it automatically refresh itself, or if we stay in there, if we stay focused on this page for another 2 minutes, will we see it refresh, or do you have to click F5 to get the latest information again? You know what I'm saying?
Question. Yes, I do.
So,
I do.
And considering that it's an airport, I would be looking for a minute-to-minute refresh update rather than having to, refresh the page again.
And just that component, right? You'd want it to be an AJAX type refresh, not the whole page.
Exactly. I agree.
What does that mean in AJAX? Like, so that for the particular web part?
Yeah, just that box, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, something that constantly goes back to the data source at a regular interval and just refresh it itself without the end user having to do anything.
Okay, and that would have to be done with using an AJAX.
Yeah, AJAX is basically saying that you are doing something asynchronous behind the scenes and not having to do a full page refresh.
Okay. Oh, I'm learning so much. All right, I want to draw your attention to something in the bottom of this site. And it says, choose a theme. Hello, you can change the website theme here. And to me, this is kind of something that might be more interactive. But I just wonder, when I saw that, I won't lie, I said, oh, I can make it smile, which is what I did, but I can make it fly. How important and how difficult is it to do something like this?
Well, you got to do 3 sets of testing instead of 1.
We have a
But at the same time, I mean, the functionality is there. My question is, for an airport site, I don't go to an airport every day. For me to try to personalize my airport site, I don't know if I would really focus on that as much, right? I guess they know their client better than I do, absolutely speaking, right? They probably know their client better than I do. But if I was focused on, my flights and my time, just give me the time. Let me know if there's any delays. How do I get to the airport? Am I ever going to personalize my site for my airport or my Expedia? I don't want to sound. There's a lot of functionality in there. Let me just say, I'm not being negative about the work being done. It looks like an awesome site. I'm just thinking from a stability perspective. Would I want to, if I go to a website that says JF Airport or Newark Airport, do you think I'm going to spend enough time to personalize so I can like the look and feel of the website, or am I going there just to go and see when is my flight due?
Right.
John, you're the only one with me here, so help me out.
Oh, I know. I'm right there with you, because it boils down to you've got so many resources to spend on your development effort, right? Where do you put them? Do you put them into the customization, or do you put them into maybe more functionality? I'm always of the opinion I always err on the side of functionality, but that doesn't mean I always wind up with the prettiest sites, right? So it really becomes it's a preference, and yeah, as you said, Nilesh, they know their customer better than you do. That's right. But on the surface, I look at that stuff, and first of all, it's at the bottom of the page, so I don't even know I can do it.
Agreed. And even the announcements, right? I would assume that if they were doing announcements for the airports or flights, wouldn't that be on the top as opposed to having transportation and airport on the top? The announcements where you would say, something's happening, there's rain, there's snow, there's fire, whatever that thing that would probably be my first thing right next to flight information.
Completely agree, and both of those boxes should be bigger than the other boxes, in my opinion, because that's where you call attention to the importance of it.
Yes.
And that's, there's like how many things on this page? Like there's at least 9, 10 boxes. A good rule of thumb is to not have, like, it's basically 5 plus or minus 2 major elements for your eye to be drawn to on anything, in any UI element. And when you have 9 equal elements, it's hard for you to just have a quick glance at the page and know where your eye should go. But yeah, arrivals. Why are people going to an airport website? Find out if the flight's available or flight's there, right? So that should be front and center.
Yeah, and for me, those tabs on top just are a little bit extra. Now I'm really confused on where to go, because a lot of times I understand that there will be a pop-up section in the middle that says, hey, this is kind of a fast look. It's something that you might think is important. But then for me, I tend to look at the tabs going across to kind of direct me throughout the site, and this. Because there's so many things in the middle, I'm confused as to what's more important. Which way should I look first?
Yeah.
But thanks a lot. This was a great critique, and it actually brought forth a question. Wait, Jennifer would like us to look at her site, and I think that's a great idea, because it has a direct person that worked with the site, and then also we can give great feedback. But before
what's also funny is none of what we've just been talking about has anything to do with SharePoint, really.
I agree.
It's just page layout, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that all of it kind of does go hand in hand, though, because
this is all the planning of a public-facing website, right? This is, I mean, it has nothing to do with SharePoint, but it's like, how do you build a public-facing site that is basically what your client is looking for?
And the nice thing is SharePoint will support any of these designs, right? The only way you know it's SharePoint is by looking up in the URL and seeing the pages. That's it.
Wow. Oh, really?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a signature. And I can tell they're using language variations by the EN there.
All right. Well, it's true. I agree with you. It's more about design than anything, but it's a great topic around that when you're trying to develop a site and you're trying to influence people to make the right decisions when you're creating your site. I do see a question from Matthew, but I'm going to go with Jennifer first and try to upload her site here. And Jennifer, I'm also going to unmute you so that you can interact with us about your site. Give me 1 second while I do that.
I got to jump in and say that's a perfect example of what I was just talking about. Those one box is the largest. That's the thing I'm supposed to look at. The next box, that's the next thing I look at. And the stuff below is stuff I might be interested in. That's good.
And I think because we have this person on the phone here, we are going to say, it's just the best looking site that we ever seen.
Absolutely.
If Jennifer said, the only thing that I'm not sure if that's by design or not, but the sign-up boxes look like they're cut off, and they look okay. They're books. Okay, now I see that they're books. At first, I thought they were rounded corner search boxes. They're actually books.
Oh, I see.
I see. So they are actually books that have been stacked one on top of each other. But if I was thinking about it, they look like traditional login boxes with username, password, and the right corners seemed like they were cut off at my first glance.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
It's good layout. I like it.
It is. Yeah.
I like the font. Is that Sego? It looks like at the top anyway.
I can't remember what we had. I know we had Avenir and maybe Palatino. I can't recall what we had for that. But we just launched this on Wednesday, actually. We've been working on it for a while, so that's why I was kind of excited to see if you could give us some feedback. We were up all night, of course, Tuesday night, getting it up there. And I just had one question, though. After we had launched this up, we had problems with our server where we kept getting servers too busy, so the pages would kind of load or half load. We found out that I guess they needed to reset, the IIS servers. Is that just something that always needs to happen when you either upload new graphics or files?
Well, there's a whole bunch of optimization things you can do when you're dealing with content that's big. You want to make sure you got your object cache on. So yeah, it's SharePoint. So you got to make sure your object cache is turned on. Is one of them. If you're storing those large files in the database, that's particularly important because otherwise you're going back to SQL Server all the time. Every time anybody has a look at that content, there is there was a, I don't know if you were at the SharePoint conference or not, but there was a talk given by Eric Schups that was all about how to optimize for performance, and it was mostly around content, and it particularly would pertain to public-facing sites, and that was one of the tips in there. And there's a number of things that you can tweak on the server. So if you shouldn't be getting too busy. So if that's the case, there's probably something you can do that gets the content into some sort of a cache that will help you out a lot.
So that's something, though. I mean, like we had the site running up, and we just put up a new, new master pages and new layout pages and new graphics. We just really changed the look and feel of it to this new look. So, but you're saying there's something else that we should do, like would that stuff have already been turned on, and just because we added new files, it created something different, or?
You might be leaning on it harder with the new design. I really can't
I see.
say.
Okay.
But,
can I make one more recommendation here? A couple of things is that
Sure.
search box. The search box again looks incomplete somehow. It looks like the left border on the search. I don't know, just me, but it doesn't look.
You got a border around a box, which kind of looks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It looks like the bottom edge is missing and the left edge is missing, or something not blended over there properly.
Okay.
Not a big fan of the Google logo either, but that's just me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
And that with the Google thing, it's just like a strict drop down directly, or are you using like any form of jQuery drop down or something else in there?
It's really just through the Google Maps, they create a little widget for you that we put in there. I think there is a way that we can go in and change the CSS to actually remove that.
Yeah. I would recommend getting rid of the Google just because you think search when you see that logo, right?
But
I see. Okay.
You want to be kind of consistent, right? So you have the Google, this language web part, which is just a single line of border, and then right below you have the search thing with like two boxes with the borders.
Right.
Like, all curved everything. So it kind of like all the boxes on your page where you can type in or something, they don't look the same UI. One of them looks like a square, the other is like a curved border with something on the right hand corner being curved, and then the search box looks again different. So no consistency in boxes there where people can type in or select something over there, right? Was there a reason for having the font on login and sign up different color than the rest of the top items?
Yeah, we kind of wanted those, I think, just to kind of, so those only ones with the icons next to them, so I think they just kind of want to differentiate them. The other links are more to pages and websites and content, but we want the students and parents to kind of highlight those in a different way. So.
Yeah, and now maybe because this is coming from a GoToWebinar, I'm not sure, but I'm not sure if I'm getting the perfect glary images over here. Like they look like either they're slightly dull or something.
I think it's just through the webinar. If you go if you go in your browser, it's all clear and clean. It's high res.
Right.
Yeah, it is. It's probably something on mine.
One of the other things, I'm not sure if you've seen, I worked on a project for Pfizer a year and a half ago with somebody else, and what they had done was something very smart with the front-end web services. When you type in their website, they don't get the /pages/default.aspx. They just get flvs.net, kind of making it look like a traditional website, but hiding all the rest of the URL piece away from like from the user. I think. Let me just bring up that website, see if that's still the case over there. I can show it to you guys.
While you're doing that, I'll throw a couple of things in there. I hate having a serif font with a non-serif font on the same page. The menus are in a serif. That's a bit jarring. And again, this is all personal preference.
Sure.
And I think your main ad is flipping too quickly.
Yeah, actually I thought the same thing, but thanks for that.
No problem.
So, Jamie, do you want to bring up another tab for me, please?
Sure.
And I don't know if this has any value add or not, but this is just like, bring up PfizerPro.com, Pfizer, P-F-I-Z-E-R, Pro.com. And see, when you go there, this is built on SharePoint. I know this is built on SharePoint. There's a Pfizer Oncology that's built on SharePoint. But they only show you Pfizer Pro. They don't show you the /pages/default.aspx. I don't know if that's a big deal or not, but kind of makes it nice for me. It's like, people don't know what page I'm going to and stuff. And it's just like, I can go to the tabs now somehow. I don't know if that's a big technical design issue or not, but just something that I want to bring up that I've seen on a front-end page. Now, if you click on Pfizer Home now, right at the top, and try to click
one?
to the one below, right below in the blue.
Oh.
Right, yeah. Yeah, try to click. See, you don't see the page name. You just see
Right.
home. It seems interesting to me the way they did that stuff over there.
Okay.
I really don't think that's like a technical reason, but you know, being an externally facing site, we try to basically hide the layouts, pages, and stuff like that, right? Maybe this is another way of kind of keeping it more secure, so people cannot go through the back doors now.
Okay.
But overall, I think there's nice content, looks nice and clean. Do you want to scroll down? I don't know. I can't see the bottom half of the page. I don't know what's going on in the bottom half of the page.
Sorry about that.
It's all right.
Yeah, I like it. I like the. It just seems so like if I'm going to come to the site, I'm going to be able to find what I need. You know, if I'm a student, if I'm a parent, even the courses in the bottom, and then I like the little pop-up, like just in case you didn't see it. So that's a big part, I bet. The courses.
Let me ask you this question. So you have two places where you can sign up for a course. Why is that?
Well, the footer on the bottom is on all pages, so we kind of left it there. That whole footer with the all the links on the bottom and the course sign up. We want that to be present on every page, so we kind of just left it, I guess, on the footer to see, so they'd see where it is. But I guess I can see what you're saying, that there's kind of a duplication right there.
Right, and again, looking for the login button, right? You change the font color on the login button, so it would be kind of different. But now you're duplicating effort, saying, okay, if you're looking for the login button, it's right there. So it defeats the purpose of having a different color with the login button if you have to, again, put in an image saying, this is where you're going to find the login thing.
Well, since we just changed the site over, a lot of the students had the login area used to be kind of down in that area. So we just wanted to provide something in the transition. We wanted to provide them with a place. So if they went to look for it there, just if their eyes were used to it out of habit, they might see that, and then we would direct them up to the top. That's more of just kind of a transition.
Yeah, okay, hopefully, because then you can use that real estate for something else then.
Yeah, our plan to use that is more like maybe even a mini rotating banner or just a banner area.
That's a very good point, because I was looking at usability, and usability is basically a way to help improve how you use the site, but at the same time you don't want to kind of alienate someone from what their habits are. So I think that's a good way to integrate and then kind of transition into the new way that might be more efficient or better for the user in the end.
Yeah, there are no right and wrong answers here.
And like we said before with the airport side also, you guys definitely know your audience better than we do. This is just something that we're looking at the site for 5 minutes and our exposure to the site now.
Sure, and I very much appreciate any feedback. It's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I'm proud that you finished your site. I remember that you were working on it earlier in the year. So it's a great job, and congratulations.
Very nice.
And from a pure UI, it's very functional.
Yes. Good job.
Thank you.
I do want to give Matthew the floor, because we have about 5 minutes left, and I don't want his questions to go without being heard. So Matthew, I know you had 2 of them, so if you can speak up, you can go ahead and ask them before we say goodbye today. Matthew? And I can ask them here for you.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes. I hear you.
So one of the questions was how you would go about managing a site-wide navigation. Would you use the default SharePoint navigational controls on a public website, or would you recommend having a list as the data source and then managing centralized navigation that way?
That's a loaded question.
Yeah, and it's also it depends.
It all depends on how again, what you feel comfortable. How do you feel your client will appreciate it? One of the best articles I've seen was where somebody was trying to build navigation based on XML and tags behind the scenes. So it was kind of dynamic. It could be very dynamic in that. So even SharePoint list might have its own limitation, but if you can convert it into a data source that you can bring up, then you can customize the data source much easily then.
And it depends if you're the case I was talking about before too had a navigation where they wanted it to behave differently at different levels and between different types of items, and you couldn't really escape doing some custom stuff in that. But if you can stick to the out-of-the-box navigation control, I find that they're the.
Hold on 1 second. Okay, there you go. Sorry, John. Go on. I think something happened there.
Oh, no problem. I don't know what anybody heard, but I like to use the navigation controls wherever possible. It just isn't always possible.
What about implications about how the HTML is output from a SharePoint navigational control compared to what I might be able to create by myself?
You'll be able to do it more efficiently.
Right.
There's an awful lot of stuff emitted. That said, you don't have to do an awful lot of, it's why are you using SharePoint for a public-facing website, right? If you don't want to be concerned with the maintenance of all of that sort of thing, like the beauty of the SharePoint navigation controls is it's a function of the content, so you can just focus on your content. If you want to roll your own, you're going to be focusing on the content and the navigation, and you're going to need to make sure they stay in sync. But that said, I mean, the more control you have, it's this classic trade-off, right? Ease of use and control.
Do you find these sites are generally built as site and sub-sites for different sections?
It depends, but yeah.
Yeah, generally speaking, yes. My classic rule of thumb has been if you are leveraging more than 5 to 10 functionalities of a SharePoint site, then it kind of justifies being a sub-site. So if you are storing documents at that level, you are leveraging the calendar at that level, you are leveraging a couple of custom lists at that level, it justifies being a sub-site. But if you're just having pages in there, then maybe you can just host those same pages at the top level too.
Right. Are there any gotchas for implementing search on a public-facing site?
Yeah.
Anonymous access.
There's one in 2010 that wasn't there in 2007. And, I've got a I got a blog post on it just because I bumped into it myself. It's just a question of setting it up, but it works quite well. It does the security trimming properly. Here it is. I'm going to post it into the chat room. I'm going to try to post it into the chat room.
Yeah, you should be able to do it and send it to everybody.
Yeah. Just a sec. No, it's not pasting in for some reason. I don't know
why. Try putting it in the questions, and maybe I can try to do it for you.
In the questions. Or maybe actually, oh, I think I was in the questions. Aha, that's why. There.
Okay.
There we go. So yeah, that's one that I bumped into. Some stuff. So it's going to naturally, not show them list items and things like that. You probably are going to want to lean on scope stuff. You're going to want specific things to not be presented to your public users. So if you can set up a scope for the content you do want presented, and make sure that your results page is always basically hard-coded to use that particular search scope, you're going to have some success with that. Some of the other stuff that I've bumped into is concerned with. Oh yeah, well obviously if you're using search, it depends on if you've got a multilingual site. And you've got a, say, in our case, a French site set up. Obviously, all of the web parts around it are going to be using French. So what I'm getting at is if you've got a predominantly English site and you've got and all you're doing for with another language is the content itself, you're going to have to set up a separate search results site that is set up with that language if you want to leverage the search web parts. That was probably clear as mud, but that was another one.
That makes sense.
Yeah. If you're using variations, it's a different animal, but I hate using variation.
I would like to thank everybody for joining us. We actually didn't even get through well, actually, that's not true. We did get through half the slides for today, so we might have part 2 of this for next week, and it'll be our last Shop Talk of the month of November. I had a lot of fun, and I learned a lot today. Some So I want to thank everybody, especially our panelists and those who participated and those who joined us, everybody really, for joining us. And please, if you have any questions or if you want us to continue this conversation next week, give us a holler on SharePoint ShopTalk on Facebook or on LinkedIn. Any last words from our panelists or any requests for next week?
Not sure, but I had one more thing for Jennifer, if I may just bring that on for a quick second.
Sure.
I'm still looking at her website over here, and then the more I look at it, I like it. My only concern is when I look at her top menu, course information, and activities and resources, it has a pop-up menu that kind of takes over my flash video behind the scenes. I've seen a lot of sites when you have a pop-up like that in terms of menu come up, they actually slide the content down so the content is still available, and then have the menu come up in between so people can still see both.
Where are you looking for this?
I'm sorry?
But this was on Jennifer's site?
Yeah, so right there, right? So the menu, right, when it comes up,
okay.
And the video behind the scenes is kind of gone, right? I've seen sites that basically, when they pop up stuff like that, they push the rest of the content down and then kind of accommodate for the pop-ups coming up over there. So that way people can still see the video or the content and get to the navigation in there.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I'm just thinking maybe, you know, some more work for you guys, that's all.
Perfect, thanks.
Hopefully you're consulting and doing a lot more over there.
Oh my gosh. Oh, thank you so much, Nilesh. And I, once again, thank you all for joining us. And please enjoy your weekend. I hear it's going to be nice out there. So get some sun. And see you next week.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Take care, everyone.